Hey everyone, it's me Twisted, and this will be a guide for the champion Anivia for the Arena game mode. Anivia is a pretty good champion in Arena, sitting at a solid A tier. She has good damage and area control, with her main drawback being that she can be quite vulnerable to heavy dive or poke compositions. She is weak to champions that are able to bypass her zone of control, either by jumping over it directly, or by simply outranging her ult and Q, though we'll go over more specific champions to avoid later on. Rumble. Rumble is really reliant on his E and Q for damage, and in order to use them, he must walk into your zone of control, as he lacks mobility or real range to bypass it in any way. He also lacks any form of hard CC to disrupt your ultimate. The only thing you have to look out for is his equalizer, which can do massive amounts of damage if you're not careful. Malzahar. You can simply control the battlefield more effectively than he can. His minions will almost instantly die to your ultimate, and his passive is effectively non-existent, as you can break it with your wall and your Q while still landing the stun. Swain. Swain has no mobility outside of flash, and he will struggle with terrain control from her ult and your W. Not to mention that due to Anivia's ult, she is incredibly strong at stopping his sustain by being able to apply grievous wounds very effectively, and also having an incredible amount of burst with her E. Urgot. Very similar to Swain in the sense that without flash he can't really get to you. He is short range and must go through your ult and your Q to reach you, as well as not being able to dash over your wall. Cassiopeia. She is similar to Rumble in the sense that she can't reach you without going through your zone of control and is immobile. If she is in range to use her ability, she's most likely going to die. The only thing you have to worry about is her flash ulting you for your stun. Nunu. He has little to no range in order to use abilities and must get close enough to you. You can also interrupt his W and his ultimate with your wall. Yorick. You can kill his summons very easily with your ultimate. Even if he is able to lock you down in the circle, you are able to place your wall between you and him so you can't land any auto attacks, and you can escape. Silas. Like many other champions you are good against, he has to go through your zone of control in order to hit you. He's a little better at doing it than some of the other champions listed, however his ultimate is very weak against you. If he steals it and he places it down, he's unable to recast it once he cancels it, so it'll only usually last for a few seconds. There are a few other champions Anivia has good matchups into, however these are the most likely that you're going to be facing. Ezreal. He is simply too slippery and you will never be able to lock him down, and he can avoid everything in your kit with just his E, and will simply whittle you down with his superior range, arguably one of your strongest counters. Zillion. He and his allies will be incredibly slippery with his speed up, making it hard for you to land your stun. He can also hit you with his Q and stun while you're unable to hit him. Diana. She can simply bypass your zone of control with her dash and burst you down before you can even react, especially if she does a flash E combo. Her damage is insane even if you do survive. With her good durability because of her E and consistent damage from her passive, she'll just finish you off. Jarvan. With Jarvan's EQR combo, he will be able to reach you and lock you down with little to no counterplay without using your flash, where he can then disengage, wait for his cooldowns, then come back and do it again. Malphite. The Rock will just ult you, or flash ult you, and burst you down quickly, which means you will either be forced to either blow your flash or Zhonya's, though I will say if you avoid his all-in with your flash or Zhonya's, he will struggle to reach you and has no mobility outside of it, where you can easily just burst him down. Wukong. He has the ability to go over walls with his invis and dash to you and ult to interrupt your ultimate. If you try to Q him, he will then knock you up again so you're unable to activate the second cast of your Q, where he will then just kill you. Yone. When it comes to Yone, the main thing you have to worry about is his ultimate, similar to Malphite, where if he misses his R, then he's a lot easier to deal with, as you can simply use your ult and wall to where his E is, so when he jumps back, you'll be able to lock him down and burst him. Zed. Zed is a lot stronger in Arena than I initially gave him credit for. He is incredibly hard for Anivia to deal with, although he has a glaring weakness, where if he ults you, if you Q behind you, where he will always land, you can almost guarantee a stun every time. In the end, champions that are able to outrange you or bypass your zone of control and burst you down are incredibly hard for Anivia, though these can be shored up with synergies that we'll go over now. Cassante. He is a beefy fighter that can be hard to lock down and deals a lot of damage, and if someone is able to jump on top of you, it's quite easy for Cassante to ult them away. Tahm Kench. He is strong frontline that is usually weak to champions that can kite him, but with your ultimate and wall you can leave a lot of champions in positions where they can't get away from him. He also has great synergy with Anivia because if you get bursted down, Tahm Kench can actually use his R on the egg and carry you to safety so you can revive. Urgot. Similar to Tahm Kench, he's strong frontline, weak against champions that can kite him out, however it's easy for you to wall people in choke points where you can both easily burst him down. Furthermore, if a champion is able to jump on top of you, Urgot can use his E flash combo to jump back and pull them off of you. Alawi. With her E, she can quite effectively bring people normally outside your range into your range, where you can deal damage to their ghosts. Alawi is also good against champions that want to burst down Anivia, where she can just sit on top of you, and if anybody tries to jump on you as Anivia, she can ultimate them. Jarvan. The lockdown from his ult is strong, leaving a mobile champion stuck in your ultimate where you and Jarvan can easily burst them down. Mordekaiser, another beefy meat shield who can also cast his ultimate on champions like Zed or Wukong if they try to rust you down and burst you. Trundle. The amount of terrain control you have with both Anivia's wall and Trundle's pillar is ridiculous. It's quite easy for you and him to limit the opponent's movements, Trundle, and you can just wail on them. Here are the augments I like taking on Anivia, with the rankings based on how much I prioritize them. In most situations, I will usually pick an S-tier augment like Jeweled Gauntlet over an A-tiered one like Doomslayer. However, it's important to keep in mind that under certain situations it may be better to pick a weaker augment for composition or synergy reasons. For example, if you have Jeweled Gauntlet already, and you have to choose between Magic Missile and its critical, in some situations you may want to opt into the larger crit chance to have extra synergy with Jeweled Gauntlet and Rite of Ruin. Sorry, I can't give 100% choices, maybe other than Earth and Wooglet's quest, but it's because each game may have so many different variables. In Arena, I would recommend maxing your E first in order to maximize your damage, followed by your Q for more damage and CC, then your W as its base length is good in pretty much most situations and on most maps, and of course your ult whenever possible. Anivia has a decent amount of items to choose from depending on the situation. However, in every game I do buy Seraph's Embrace, as the mana and shield are too valuable on Anivia due to her low durability and how mana hungry she is, so I usually buy it first so I can get it stacked as soon as possible. When it comes to mythics, I would recommend either going Ludens if you need to burst people down, Everfrost if you need the extra protection from the health and the extra CC, and Leandries if you need to deal damage to tanks or sustain comps, like Moonstone Swain for example. I am also a big advocate for Rite of Ruin and purchase it almost every game, even if I don't have a large amount of crit chance, as I believe the thousands of HP worth of shielding you can get from it is too valuable. Zanya's Morellas are also good buys depending on the situation. I would say Deathcap and Voidstaff are always must buy on most mages. I've also done some testing with Imperial Mandate and it seems to be okay, but I'm still testing it, so Other than that, I'm going to recommend going Pen Boots almost every game. Of course, if you get the option to go Wooglets and or Earth Spatula, you should always pick those. Finally, if the enemy team has a very tanky team composition like Heartsteel Urgot, Swain, you should go Perplexity for the Giant Slayer passive. Passive Rebirth. Upon taking fatal damage, Anivia enters an egg form for 6 seconds and restores all of her HP. While in her egg, Anivia is unable to act and gains -40 to -20 bonus armor and magic resistance. If Anivia remains alive, by the end of the duration, she is revived with her current egg's health. Useful info and tips. Triggering Rebirth will break all tethers on Anivia. Chrono Shift and GA will take priority over Rebirth. Rebirth will refresh every round in Arena. While in Egg, you are counted as a champion and can still receive heals, shields, and even be devoured by Tahm Kench. All channels will be interrupted upon triggering Rebirth. Anivia's egg can be displaced and moved by champion abilities like Urgot E and Tristana R. Ally resurrections will still go through even if you're still in egg form, so as long as you die on top of the circle, you should still get the revive off. Anivia's egg can also be ignited or exhausted. Any ally Callista or champion with the Oathsworn augment can use Fate's Call on you while you are in egg form to get you to safety. Q. Flash Frost. On first cast, Anivia will launch a chunk of ice in a target direction that deals magic damage to enemies it hit and slows them. On the second cast, or when it reaches max distance, the chunk of ice will shatter, dealing magic damage to nearby enemies and stunning them, as well as refreshing the slow. Useful info and tips. The initial cast and manual recast count as ability activations for things like Spellblade and Force Pulse. Flash Frost will always cast from where Anivia was at the start of the cast time. Spell Shields can only prevent either the collision hit or the recast from affecting the target, not both. So if you time your Q correctly to somebody who has a Spell Shield, you can wait for it to pass through them, proc their Spell Shield, and then activate it for the stun. Anivia's Q is a projectile and is blocked by Yasuo Windwall, Braum Shield, and Samira W. If you cast Anivia's Q outside of Gwen's Shroud, you can flash into it to still get the stun off. Anivia's Q can only proc Conqueror once, even if it damages the same target twice with both parts. W. Crystallize. Anivia will summon a wall of ice in the target direction perpendicular to where she is facing, knocking all units away from it, though not through terrain. The wall will act as impassable terrain for 5 seconds. Useful info and tips. Anivia wall will get rid of spell shields like Banshees and Malzahar passive. Getting displaced by Anivia's wall does count as a displacement for Yasuoar and Samira passive. Champions can be pinned to terrain with Anivia's wall, leaving them unable to move for 5 seconds. If a champion is clicking behind the wall, the game will send them the shortest path to the place they are clicking. So it's easy to land your abilities because if you place the wall slightly in one direction more than another, since they're clicking behind it, you will know exactly where they're going to be going, which makes it easy to land your QE combo. E. Frostbite. Hitting an enemy with Anivia's Q, or fully formed R, will make them become chilled for a few seconds, refreshing on subsequent hits. Upon activation, Anivia will shoot a shard of ice at an enemy and deal magic damage, however the damage is doubled if they are chilled. Useful info and tips. Anivia E will count as a projectile and be blocked by Yasuo Wind Wall, Braum Shield, and Samira W. The damage on her E is calculated on hit, so if the target loses chilled or cleanses it before her E lands, it won't deal double damage. If the target becomes untargetable, dies, or is no longer in sight during the cast time, the ability will cancel and won't go on cooldown or paste cost. R. Glacial Storm. Anivia will call forth a storm of ice and snow in a target location, dealing magic damage every half second and slowing enemies for 1 second. The storm area will increase in size and damage over 1.5 seconds, and at maximum size will deal 300% damage and increase the slow's effectiveness by 50%. Useful info and tips. Anivia R slow will leave a trail that is visible even if the target is stealthed. Glacial Storm isn't interrupted by stasis, making Zhonya's and Wooglets very good on Anivia. Anivia R isn't blocked by spell shields. Anivia R can only be stopped by Heart CC and not displacements like Trundle Pillar. When cancelled, Anivia R will do 1 last tick of damage, so if you time it correctly, you can get 1 little extra burst of damage off. In Arena, your main goal as Anivia will be to use your massive zoning potential to control the plants and choke points. When a plant is about to spawn, you can place your ultimate on top of it, or even wall the enemy off of it and just take it for yourself. And if an enemy is looking to flank you, you can just use the wall to block them off and force a 1v2 situation. Just keep in mind that you should try to keep your distance and wait for enemies to walk into you, where you can trap them and burst them down. You aren't very good at chasing champions down, so only opt into this type of playstyle if you are forced to do so. I want to finish off by saying that I appreciate anybody who watches this video. I plan on making more for plenty of other champions in Arena, so if you can like and subscribe, I would really appreciate it.